Aloha and welcome to the Embodied Healing Self podcast with your host, Jen Mons. Each week, join me for soul-inspired, conscious conversations around embodied healing and awakening to your soul's purpose. Thank you for listening in.
Aloha, friends, and welcome back to this week's episode of the Embodied Healing Self. Wow, 2020 has been a year, hasn't it? You guys remember last week my guest, Ashley Middleton, and I were, just having the discussion around current global events and the unity and the honoring of our differences in races and beliefs and all of that. And we kind of joked about like that saying that we have, hindsight is 2020. Like, we are in such a massive global healing and awakening right now. It's like, it's amazing. And, I think just where I stand in my belief right now is that, and I say this to invite you to consider this for you in your life, is that everything that we have been doing for our entire life has prepared us for this moment. Everything. And so I'm going to share my thoughts with you on sort of where I'm at in this process, because I would imagine that there are some of you that could be feeling the same way that I do, or, have questions similar to what I'm processing in this whole experience. First of all, I want to say that wherever you are is where you are, and it's not wrong or right, it just is. I think when we get attached to labeling things as this or that, we create duality. And we talked about that last week in our podcast, sort of like finding that middle ground, that space of honoring without attachment, like awareness without attachment. So wherever you are, whether you're protesting, you're in anger, your sadness, your grief, your shame, your guilt, your joy, your happiness, your peace, wherever you are is perfectly okay. And I know for me, here we are, I'm recording this about 2 weeks into sort of like the stage 2 that we're out of this global awakening. First it was the pandemic and the COVID, and it's really the same experience on the inside for me and different experience on the outside. And so we're going to talk about that today. So I gave myself permission to go through all of the feelings, all of them, from sadness to anger to grief to shame to guilt, all of them. And I've just learned for myself, where I'm at in my life, I've had many different experiences where I have felt extreme depths of all of those emotions. And so I've learned that before I speak out, it's an opportunity for me to allow myself to feel the feelings of where I'm at, be in touch with the outside world, gather information from many different resources. I've given myself permission to listen to people that trigger me. I like to say triggers and activation. People that I wouldn't normally listen to. I've given myself permission to listen to them and to see their side of the story. And I have put myself in the shoes of, or have tried to, I've been willing to put myself in the shoes of many, many different people through authentic conversations and just being in the space of noticing what it might be like to be a person in this event right now, what it would be like to be anyone. I mean, just, a black police officer or a black child, a white child, like any Native Americans right now, everybody, right? Somebody in another country witnessing our country going through this. And I'm noticing this is a massive effort to bring us together into unity. And we get to choose what our internal experience is like through this. So I gave myself permission to go through all of the emotional ups and downs and roller coasters. I allowed myself permission to process it in different ways. I had the punching gloves out. I cried. I did dynamic meditation and danced and just all of it. I have a very, very hypersensitive emotional body. So I gave myself permission to hold the capacity for all the emotions. I allowed myself to feel, and then I went inward. And I really asked myself to get super clear in every moment, to go in me and ask myself, what is this here to teach me? Where have I showed up in my life with some sort of prejudice against something or someone? Because we all do it. I noticed myself feeling a little prejudiced towards people who were angry and rioting. And then I took that look inward and just noticed that it was an opportunity for me to see them and witness them in that and just know that there is a place for everyone. We are all in different places. Some people are protesting, some people are rioting, some people are silently meditating, some people are speaking, some people are having conversations, some people are learning and researching. And all of it is welcome because the expansiveness of the human condition is exactly that in the world. What's happening in the world outwardly is just an expression of what's happening with us internally. And so I was able to relate with all of the people taking actions in different ways so that I could find my place where I stood. And I was consciously aware not to try and react out of emotion, although sometimes I did, because all of this is a practice, right? We get to practice what we learn. And what we're here to learn, I believe we're here to teach. And so I want to just share with you some of the things that have been really coming through for me, what I've been struggling with, what my message is, what I stand in. Maybe some of you can relate and maybe some of you don't. And I want to hear from both of you because this is how we grow together. We learn more from the people that we disagree with than the people who validate our beliefs. That was a quote that I shared on social media recently. I noticed that in myself, like how easy it is for me to find the people who are aligned with my beliefs, and that's important because that's your tribe. But don't turn your head the other way from the people who see things differently. Seek to understand their experiences because their experiences are a reflection of you, your internal work, either something that you can lean into that's uncomfortable or acknowledging something that you have processed. I've really been in a place of just knowing that every time I'm reflecting or journaling, I'm just reminded of how important it is to share the message to others that our inner work creates our outer world. You probably remember when I had Karen Haysbert on, a year ago. Beautiful woman. I just love her messaging. We talked about it then because this is the truth. Whatever you believe to be true about the world is your world. So whenever we find ourselves in a place of where the ego comes in, which shows up through our emotions often, we have to get out of our head and into our hearts and our intuitive hearts and listen to the voice within. When we find ourselves uncomfortable, that right there is the invitation. That's the invitation for you to grow and expand. And it's so much easier to project our emotions outward onto other people and to make them wrong. I'm just telling you guys the truth. We have to take radical personal responsibility for where we stand in our truth and also for the change that we want to create in the world by being the change and doing the inner work. Projecting your emotions outward is not taking personal self-responsibility. It's creating an outward expression because you don't want to deal with it. That's the invitation to go inward and ask yourself, what is this here to teach me? Where have I been prejudiced in my life? That's what I've been asking myself, and I know I have them too. I have showed up prejudiced in ways and judged people for what I perceived as laziness, or as I shared last week, I know that I feel uncomfortable when I'm driving through certain neighborhoods in the different areas of the country because of experiences that I had as a child or something that I learned. And I just want you guys to know, I want to give you permission to know that that doesn't make you wrong and you don't have to feel shame or guilt around that. It's an invitation to do the inner work, to be curious about what it has to teach you. Notice where prejudice and judgment show up in your life against the way any type of person looks, against any type of system trying to create change, against anyone who doesn't believe in what you believe in. And really ask yourself, where do I show up in my life? Do an internal checklist on yourself of where you notice this showing up, because that's where the work begins with you. And that's the way we create change in the world. Something else that came through to me is this idea of having discernment without judgment. So what is discernment? Discernment is, the way I see it, the act of judging. So being discerning with information, not allowing yourself to be fully taken in or guided, for example, by your emotions, but without judgment. There's a difference between discernment and judgment. Judgment has an attachment to it. It goes into like, what is prejudice, right? Prejudice is like a preconceived idea of what someone or something represents. So discernment is knowing that already exists and then going inward and discerning for yourself, how is this showing up for me? So discernment is taking personal self-responsibility, whereas judgment is projecting outwards. Prejudice is projecting outwards. So there's a really big difference. And so, to be honest, my message that I've been standing in has been one of unity, love, and peace. And it's not the most popular message that I see, but it's mine, and that's okay. It's where I am in my journey, in my process, and there are going to be people that are standing in that, and there are going to be people standing in anger, and there are going to be people standing in justice, and there are going to be people standing in whatever their message is, but I just know what's true for me after going inward and doing the work is love. And I can't pretend to be another way. It's where I am. It's what I keep hearing, to stay the course and stand in that. To even in my own journey, love the part of me that maybe did express prejudice against a person who I perceived didn't work as hard as I did in their life, because that was one that came up for me. I felt like I had done a lot of work around interracial relationships and black and white throughout my life just because of the way that I grew up. And so this acknowledging this deep pain, I felt like wasn't new for me. I felt like I've been feeling this for my entire life. Knowing the pain and knowing the love in it too. Knowing the love in culturally diverse environments and what that brings for us, the beauty in it. And so what this was really showing for me is like getting super clear on where I've had judgment against other people. And I was having a little bit of judgment towards people that I felt were trying to create more fear and anger because I didn't want that. And so I did the inner work. What is this about? What is this here to show you? Do you have judgment on anger? And I allowed myself to have my own anger. Anger is just passion misunderstood. It's that emotion of anger is healthy, but it's what we do with it when we act in anger that is not. It can show up as not having self-responsibility if we don't do it in a way that doesn't project harm onto other people. That's my belief. So taking responsibility for how we feel without projecting it onto other people. And this is, you guys, is why the inner work is so important. Illuminating your own shadows. I've been talking a lot about that. Go deep into what the shadows are that you have within you, because that is what is being reflected in the outside world right now. It was the same with the pandemic. You were either living in fear or living in trust. You were either responding reactively out of taking care of your health, or you were confident and empowered in trusting in your well-being. And everybody's already forgotten about that. What happened to that just a few weeks ago? We were 6 feet apart, and now we're shoulder to shoulder on the streets together, standing for what we believe in. So I find it really interesting how the human collective responds so quickly. But do we give ourselves enough time to sit and be with the inner reflection of ourselves? What I've been struggling with, so my message has been unity, love, and peace. And I know that for some people that triggers them. I know it does. And I get it. I remember being triggered by people like that. I remember, like I said, I quit my job months after 9/11 to go on a military prepositionship. I left my corporate job because I was willing to fight and die for this country. And, I did that out of this just fierce force within me. So I know what it's like to feel uncomfortable around people who stand for love and peace. We can't all be in the same space at the same time. Where we are is a reflection of our own diversity within us, our own diversity of emotions, our own diversity of identities, judgments, and perceptions that are a part of our life experience. Our lived experience creates who we are today. So because as one human, we are complex in that way, as one world, as one planet, we are complex on that way. And it's also the beauty of the human condition. And what I was struggling with that my friend Ashley helped me to, really just come to terms with last week was the duality of labeling. Labeling anger, labeling love, labeling black, labeling white, labeling this, labeling that, the attachment to the identity, the attachment to the labels. And what I noticed is it's not the labeling or the identity itself that causes harm or suffering or creates duality, but the attachment to it is my belief. So as long as we can own where we are and who we are with these open arms to be open to exploring the other parts of us that others reflect back to us, then I feel like that's a healthy place to be. But if we are so staunch in standing in where we are, now there's a difference between like owning your power and knowing your power and like standing in it. So I feel like knowing it means it's an internal feeling that really you don't have to be validated. Standing in it is knowing it and feeling solid in it. Like just, no one can touch you. And owning it is allowing others to witness you in it. Allowing others to witness you in your power, sharing with others through the expression of who you are. And I think it's important for each of us to own who we are, for you to own your life experiences, for you to own your ethnicity, for you to own all of the parts, the identities of your life that have brought you to this moment. It's important to own and to know that that is a part of who you are. Nobody else has lived your life experiences. Nobody else has had the identities that you have. And because of that, nobody's going to understand yours fully. We can try to listen, but we won't know what it's like to be you. You won't know what it's like to be me. And that's okay. As long as we are willing to give space to people to allow them to stand and own who they are without trying to change them, then we come to a place where we see unity and oneness and wholeness. It's when we embrace those parts of ourselves, the shadow, that we can embrace what we perceive as the shadow in other people. So I really want to invite you to just consider that, how important the inner work is. The inner work is just being illuminated on a global scale right now. And this is our chance. This is our chance to choose differently. And it's always uncomfortable. I've been a transformational coach for 10 years, but I've always been a teacher and a coach my whole life. I've just been serving in that capacity for 10 years. And it's always uncomfortable. And the moment you feel uncomfortable, I invite you to take that step forward. If you really want to create change in your life, if you really want to show up as the best version of yourself and the capacity of all of whatever that is for you, the capacity to love fully, to be there, to be you for your family, for your friends, for the community, for the world, then that uncomfortable place is the next step. I'm going to invite you to find somebody to support you in that process. Illuminate those shadows within you around your prejudice, where your judgment is. And if you find yourself really having to project your ideas and be validated and to be right, that's another invitation. I've noticed a lot of people really wanting to speak out to be validated. And so they only respond to the people who validate them. But then when somebody comes in with another idea that doesn't agree with their post, well, they're either ignored or it turns into an uncomfortable conversation. And so I invite you to have those uncomfortable conversations with the intention to be curious, to seek to understand the other person's side. Put yourself in every single person's shoes. Because the truth is, everyone, we are so much more alike than we are different. We are so much more alike than we are different. I am seeing most of us want this healing. I am seeing a global effort coming together to support the lives of people of color in ways that I've never seen before. It is time. So I invite you to continue seeking to understand, educate yourself, through authentic sources of media. Educate yourself through conversation. Allow yourself to feel the emotions that you're feeling without making yourself wrong or anybody else wrong for where they are. Do the inner work. Journal about it. Meditate. Pray. Just sit with it. Ask yourself, what is this a reflection of me? What is this here to show me or teach me? Seek support. I'll tell you what support does. A coach, support, somebody, a friend, helps you to see your blind spots. That's what we do with real, radical, authentic, nurturing space. That's what we do. We help you to illuminate the shadows. So if you're struggling with that, seek support. I do this work. I've shared a complimentary transmuting, transforming limiting beliefs webinar in my closed Facebook group, the Embodied Healing and Empowered Living Community. So I invite you to come over and check that out. It's a webinar I did a couple years ago. I dug it back out. I shared it with my community, just complimentary, so that to invite you to do the work. If you need to go deeper, seek support. This is our time. I can't stress that enough. It's 2020. It's going to be uncomfortable until we're willing to go through it. Not around it, not over it, not turning our head the other way. We must go through it. Each of us individually must go through our own shadows. And on the other side is the expanded version of you. The expanded version of you. What would that look like for you? Your joy, your freedom, your confidence, your clarity, peace, love, passion. The expanded version of survivor strategies and unhealthy emotions becomes those. The shadow becomes the light. It's just a different shade. That's it. So thank you for listening. I would really love to hear what you have to say around this. If you've been feeling the same feels, if you have any great resources that you'd like to share. Most of the books that have been recommended are sold out on Amazon right now, which is a great sign, right? Everybody's wants to learn more and give you permission to be where you are, to find tribe, to find connection, maybe in new ways. But I'm just really inviting you to seek that connection in that community. And, I can share from my personal perspective. I lead a couple of groups and I participate in one, and I am just so grateful that I have had that throughout my life, but especially this year. You are not in this alone. You are not alone. We are all in this together, and we are being invited right now for radical healing and transformation. So find those people that can help you in this process. Find those people, and don't be afraid to ask for what you need. If there's a person you want to work with and it feels unavailable, I know a lot of healers are really willing to hold the space and create sliding scales for in any way to help people out right now, because this is what we're here to do. We're here to help the planet heal one by one. So don't be afraid to ask for what you need. I love you all. You are all lovable and loved and loving. So thank you for listening in, and I can't wait to see you next week. Aloha. Hello, friends, and thank you so much for joining me today and being a part of this community. I know there are many other podcasts that you could be tuning into, and I am deeply honored that you chose to listen in and be present with me today. I love and cherish and appreciate you, and I want to invite you to join our tribe and Facebook group under jenmons.com/connect. I would also love to gift you your guide to discovering and overcoming the self-limiting beliefs standing in the way of you living in optimal health, more energy, fulfillment, and self-confidence to create an embodied, healthy, whole you. You can find this at jenmons.com/tribe. I also have one small request to help spread the love. In order for this podcast to show up in the feed of social media platforms of other like-minded people, we need reviews.
So please head on over to jenmons.com/podcast to leave a review. You will also find other inspiring episodes on that page. So I personally read these reviews weekly and would love to give you a shout out and share your kind words with our listeners. You can find me on Instagram and Facebook as Jen Mons or the Holistic Coach with the W Holistic and Jen Mons, JenMons.com. Thank you so much and have an amazing day. Aloha.